kind of have it all focus on like the questions that you all may have particular to the admissions process for graduate programs, I think that it's perfect that we kind of just jump right in. So the first part of our hour is going to be like introductions from like the co-host and then the panelists. So our hour is going to be broken up within two sections. Specifically, the first part is going to be prepared questions that the co-hosts have created. And then the second half is going to be student-based questions that you all can send in the chat. So if you would like to submit a question, please send it to either Vivek, myself, or Mela. We'll be monitoring all the questions that you have submitted to us so we can get those answered during that part of the hour. So I'm going to start. So the introductions, how it's going to work is I'm going to be asking for your name, the program that you're representing or you're currently in, the year that you started your program or graduated, the school that it's currently housed in, and then when you graduated undergrad. So I'm an undergrad right now. So my name is Sean, as I stated earlier. I'm currently in the BA Public Policy program here at the UCR School of Public Policy. I started the program in fall 2019 as an admitted freshman, and I haven't graduated undergrad yet, so I can't really answer that question. But I would like to pass it over to Vivek to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vivek Kakar. I'm the founding executive director of the Roosevelt Network chapter here at UC Riverside. I am a second year with third year standing here at UCR in the undergrad program in the School of Public Policy. I'm going to be graduating next year, so I'll be able to answer that last question. But so excited to have everyone here today. I'm happy to pass it along to Medha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Medha Mainwal, and I'm the president of the Roosevelt chapter at UCLA. And we're happy to be co-programming with UCR for this event today. I am basically a junior at my undergrad, and I'm majoring in business economics and public affairs in the School of Public Affairs at UCLA. And I should be graduating next June. I think I'll pass it off to Rihanna.
Hi, my name is Rihanna. I'm a third year at UCLA. I'm majoring in political science, and I'll be graduating next year. And I'll pass on over to Sam.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sam. I graduated from UCR's School of Public Policy in last year, June 2020. I'll be starting at USC's the Sol Price School to pursue my master's in public policy this fall.
Yoli, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Yoli Aguilar Candelario. I graduated with my BA in Public Policy from UCR with the School of Public Policy back in June 2020. I decided to continue my higher education and my master's degree at UCR as well. So I am pursuing my Master of Public Policy here at UCR with the School of Public Policy. I started the program in October 2020 and anticipate my graduation next year in June 2022. So with that, I will pass it over to Joy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joy. I graduated from UCR as a BA in public policy actually in 2017, so feeling very old compared to everybody else. But yeah, so I attended Yale and got my MPH in 2018 and graduated just last year during the pandemic. Awesome. And so, yeah, it's been a ride, and currently working as a policy consultant in DC. I'll pass it off to Francesco.
Hi, everyone. My name is Francesco Arreaga. I graduated from UCLA in 2017 with a degree in political science and Chinese. I'm very grateful to the UCLA Roosevelt chapter for inviting me back today. And currently I'm in my final semester of law school at UC Berkeley. And very happy to be here.
We're gonna kind of just jump right into like the questions that we have when it comes to the prepared questions that the co-hosts have created for us. So I would like to pass it off to Ruhena for the first question that was prepared.
So for our panelists, we're wondering how long after your undergrad did you apply to grad school? What was the waiting period like?
Yeah, Joy.
Just go.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 2017 and applied. I waited a year before applying to grad school, primarily because I really wanted to get some work experience in, and just also honestly wanted to take a break from school for a bit and wanted to know what it was like to work a 9 to 5. So I took the year and actually did a fellowship. For those of you who actually go to UCR, I was a fellow with the Western Riverside Council of Governments, WRCOG, and it was really great because I was a fellow with the planning department in Moreno Valley and was involved in community development and strategic planning for the city. And it really actually reinforced my passion for public health because it introduced me into just how interdisciplinary the field is and how public health is really all around us. And there are multiple ways and millions of ways that you can impact public health. And so really grateful for the year that I took off. Not really off because I still worked, but it was still a fun year.
Definitely. I see Yoli also has a hand raised.
Yes, so as if you guys recall, I just graduated in June 2020, but I did start my process of looking at grad schools probably at the beginning of my 4th year. I knew I wanted to pursue my master's, although I was unsure in what direction I wanted to take. I knew I wanted to pursue my master's, so I started my research at the beginning of my 4th year, and I had a quick turnaround because I was like, I need to take my GRE soon in order to get into the program. So I did my research. I chose my top 3 schools, and then I started studying, and luckily I am here today. I kind of wanted to pursue my master's as soon as I could because in my undergrad, I worked since I was my 1st year. I had a full-time job throughout my 4 years. I was working at Home Depot, and I realized this is not for me. I need to better myself and get my education. So yeah, that's pretty much why I started early on and decided to go straight into it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for like your answer. I think that definitely resonates with like a lot of us that kind of want to pursue like higher education. Specifically, like we want to see like I was definitely say a change. So definitely resonate with that. But I do see that Sam has his hand raised. So definitely Sam, take it away.
Yeah, I waited a year to apply for grad school, graduated in June, and I started in June. Right after my graduation, I took like a few weeks off and then got to work on my grad school apps. So yeah, I wanted to wait a year, and especially with COVID, I feel like if it wasn't for those like COVID circumstances forcing like me to go back home and such, I probably I probably would have taken a year off anyways, and gotten work experience. But yeah, I took off a year, and I think honestly it's a wise decision for it's different for everyone, but for me at least, that helped me bolster my resume and have more time to work on my applications instead of doing it during school.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our next question is to those who did take a gap. What did you do in the gap between the undergrad and applying for grad school? And I know a lot of people take time to take the GRE and study for that. Is that kind of enough time, or do you recommend kind of some programs there? Sam, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So I think definitely a year off for me was really beneficial. I would say my applications started being due in I think late November, early December to early January. I think USC's was due like January 8th or 15th or something like that. So what I started out doing, I studied for the GRE. It's optional, and especially this past year, it was optional for most schools, but I would definitely recommend taking the GRE, even if it's not required. I think it really can just help your application. It was a lot of work. I don't like the GRE. I have qualms with ETS. I really don't like ETS, but or the like just the GRE in general. I don't like standardized tests like that, but I do think it's a wise idea to do that. What I did was I I'm terrible at math, and they have a quantitative section. I did the Princeton Review program where it was expensive, but they guaranteed you would get like a 6-point increase from like your first practice test to the actual score on the test. And it was a money back guarantee. I only increased by 5 points and I got all my money back. So I wasn't trying to do that. I'm just bad at math, but yeah, that came in handy. But yeah, I would say take the GRE. I basically did all my GRE stuff throughout the summer. I work for the state parks here in Santa Cruz. That's what I did for my year off. And while I was there on slow days, and obviously this isn't, not everyone can do this, but I was bringing flashcards to work, on my lunch breaks, on slow days, going over stuff like that, just vocab flashwords. And when I got home, I would designate like 2-3 hours to studying for it. And then I would say I started working on my personal statements probably in September or October. I think looking back, personal statements were definitely a challenge for me. I would recommend working on your personal statements. Well, I don't know. I wish I had started working on them earlier. I was definitely really stressed towards the end of the year, finishing those up because it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But yeah, that's kind of what I did in my year off, working, also interning as well, just getting involved in local community politics here in Santa Cruz.
Okay, so that kind of like addressed some of the questions, but if you took the GRE or the GMAT or LSAT, how and when did you study for it? If any of the other panelists want to also answer the question. Yeah, Yoli, please.
Yes, so I kind of have a unique situation. Unfortunately, I come from a low income family, so having the money to prep for the GRE or even to take the GRE was really difficult for myself. So I had to, obviously, I was working full time, but I was trying to pay for my expenses too. I have bills on top of that. But aside from that, I kind of took the initiative to look into some affordable but really good quality GRE prep books. I ended up following up and doing the program with ETS. Unlike Sam, that Stacey does not like ETS, but I decided to go with it. And I actually did not study for that long, unfortunately, just because with my time and commitment to all the other responsibilities and involvements that I had on campus, it was really difficult for me to find that balance. But ultimately, I told myself I have one shot at this. I need to study as much as I can with everything going on. And I did. And I surprisingly scored really well. And just, I hope to resonate with those that, think that the GRE is a little too expensive or unaffordable. I was in the same boat as you guys, but that commitment you guys have will take you a long way. So I was definitely in a different boat than many of others, especially with money being a problem for myself. But I will be honest, I did not study as much as I probably should have, but luckily I was able to score really well.
Oh, and Meda, yeah.
Yeah, hi Yoli. I just wanted to follow up for the audience members over here who may not know what ETS is. Could you please explain that?
Sorry. Yes, ETS just stands for Educational Testing System, and they are the facilitators of the GRE.
Francesco, if you'd like to answer the question as well.
Sure. So I had to take the LSAT to apply for law school. And one program that I will say was very helpful for me was the UCLA Law Fellows program. It's a program that is open to all undergraduate students from any school. So you can apply for that program and they will provide you a scholarship for an LSAT prep course. They'll also host different speakers so that you can get a little bit of a feel for what law school is like. So that's I highly advise everyone here to look into that UCLA Law Fellow program if you're interested in applying to law school.
Before we move on to the next question, Joy, did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think just that I don't think there's necessarily a right number of years to take off. And like, I took a year, but I could have taken 2 or 3 years. And it just really depends on how, burnt out you may be from college, which is really real, and how much time you want to bolster up your resume. And to be honest, I think that, a year was enough for me, but some of the people that I looked up to the most in grad school, who were a bit older than me, had more experience, were some of the smartest people I'd ever met in my life, and were leaders at the school. So I think there's no wrong answer, but just really determining how you feel and what are your priorities when you're graduating.
Definitely. So there's like a really big part of like I would definitely say like grad school applications that a lot of us undergrads like would be hesitant about. It would definitely be like letters of recommendation. So specifically, like how many letters of recommendation did you have like for your applications? One, and how did you approach like professors or anyone that wrote a letter of recommendation to for you for like your specific like program? Yoli, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. So for both programs that I applied to, I applied both to UCLA and UCR. They both had a requirement of 3 letters of recommendation. So I got 3 letters of recommendation. How I approached professors and faculty that I knew from UCR just because I was familiar with them. I had the best relationship with them. But I kind of tried to, set the ground of, hey, what's your research about? Can I learn a little bit more about yourself? I tried to create that personal connection before going and asking the question, hey, can you write me a letter of rec? I highly recommend to get that personal relationship first, because I know some professors have a lot of requests, and then if you just go into their office hours or knock on their door and it's like, hey, I need a letter of rec, my application is due in a week, they're gonna look at you like, hey, maybe you should have approached me, like I don't even know you. And just to think about how professors or even faculty come across various students, hundreds of students in a quarter or per year, it's really key to get to be able to know them and create that relationship with them to then ask for a request. And one piece of advice that I would give to anybody seeking a letter of recommendation is always make requests, not demands. You don't want to go and demand there and be, hey, I need a letter of rec now. You want to first make that request, but first and foremost, make that personal connection with those that you're going to ask.
Definitely, Sam.
Yeah, I got all the programs I applied to required 3. I got 4 just in case, because most of them let you submit extras. I believe they let you, I think all of them let you go up to like 4. So yeah, it was I got 1 from a professor. I didn't do more than 1 professor. And the others were just professional connections I had. For example, I got one from Jose Medina, and some other people I had worked with in the past. But yeah, I actually requested my letters of rec immediately when I started my application. So June of last year. That was a bit too early, because then I wouldn't say they kind of forgot about it. So I was like, I made sure to continue checking in. But from June to like September, that's a while. So you probably don't need to do it that early. But just make sure you're doing it, I would say at least like 3 months before your applications are due.
Definitely. I do have a follow-up. So, when asking or like requesting for like a letter of rec, like how did you do it? Like, I know I'm pretty sure it's usually through like email, but like, did you give them like someone like a guideline of like what you were looking for in like a letter of rec, or did you let them do like a free for all, like what they know about you? Like, I think that is like a key thing when like asking for letter of rec, how you did it as well. So I see that Joy raised her hand first. So if you would like to give us your answer.
Yeah, so I generally, if possible, and this was obviously more possible before the pandemic, but I usually tried to ask in person. And so I reached out to people that I was actually still kept in touch with, like my previous bosses, and asked them out to lunch, and I got them lunch. And then, kind of let them know that I was applying to grad schools, that their assessment of me meant a lot to me, and that they knew who I was and the work that I produce. And kind of started the conversation there, and then followed up with an email to let them know kind of like if they could hit on these specific areas, because especially that like there are going to be, I think you need to understand like the key points of like what the school that you're specifically interested in is like looking for. If they're looking for someone who is, kind of very concentrated in the specific area, if your recommendation letter can speak to that, that would be great. So I was going into public health, and I really wanted my recommendation letters to really reflect kind of my interdisciplinary education and my broad interests in just overall mission to improve healthcare access and quality. And so wanted that to really show, understanding that the programs I was applying to, that was a key thing for them.
Francesco, would you like to add on?
Sure. So my advice to everyone would simply be to, apart from everything that has been said, also consider sharing your personal statement with the people who are writing your letters of recommendation. So for example, one of the persons who wrote my letter of recommendation was a thesis advisor that I had at UCLA. But we knew each other academically, but we didn't really know each other personally because we didn't get that opportunity. And so by sharing your personal statement, you're revealing to that professor or to that supervisor something about you. So for example, in my case, the professor found out that I'm a first-gen professional, and we got to have a little bit more of a chat about my academic trajectory. And so if you're able to share those statements with the person writing the letter of recommendation, it will only help them write a better letter for you, and it'll also strengthen your relationship with those people.
Thank you so much for that, Anne. I've never even thought about it like that. So that's like super helpful. And to like kind of follow up with that. So what were your guys' like processes when formulating your personal statements? If you want to go again, or Francesco, if you want to go again, then Yoli, you can go after.
Sure. Do you mind repeating that? I couldn't catch
What
that.
was your process like when formulating your personal statement?
So the process for me, at least, was I thought of every part of the application process as a piece of a puzzle. And so for me, the personal statement is what shows the human being behind the application. Like your GPA is one part of your academic journey, your LSAT score is another part. But at the end of the day, they want to know, who is this person? What is this person going to contribute to this program? What is this person going to do with their degree? Why do they want to have this degree? Why are they on this trajectory? What's their purpose? And so that's how I thought about it, and I try to answer all of those points so that it made sense, so that you can explain why you did certain things in your resume, why you took certain actions. The personal statement should, I think, bring everything together and sort of show that big piece puzzle so that it makes sense to them.
Thank you for sharing. Yoli, do you want to add on?
Yeah, so Francesco just took all the words out of my mouth. The perfect example of what a personal statement should represent, as just being that whole entirety and showing who the person is behind the application. But just to kind of piggyback on my personal experience, is I didn't know how to write a personal letter. The last time I had wrote, or personal statement, I'm sorry. Like the last time I had wrote a statement, it was when I was applying for my undergrad, and I was in high school having my counselors tell me, you need to write this, you need to write this, and you need to write this. So when it came down to my application, I was like, I don't even know where to start. So I did seek help from a professor that I could relate to. She was a first gen student as well. So I decided to reach out to her, and I was like, hey, I'm applying for grad school and I have no idea what to write in my personal statement. And so we just had a conversation, and she started facilitating ideas and just kind of making me think, what do you want to do with this degree? What are you going to want to do? Or what are some instances that made you think this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? And so then that facilitated a big discussion of how I wanted to do health policy, immigration policy, and I just ended up incorporating all those puzzle pieces, as Francesco mentioned, into my personal statement. But I did have to seek help because I was completely lost of where to start.
Thank you so much for sharing. Joy, if you'd like to add on, and then we'll go to Sam after.
Yeah, so I think one of the scariest things about a personal statement, of course, is that you are revealing all of these parts of yourself and being super vulnerable, like Francesco said. And one of the hardest things with writing, obviously, is sending it to people to read. And it was really intimidating to have someone completely tear apart my essay, but really necessary. I think if you can send it to people, if you feel comfortable enough to send it to multiple people that you know are really good writers and are really great at telling stories, I highly recommend it. I sent it to at least 5 or 6 people, different types of people from different backgrounds, just so they can give me their take on, after reading it, can they get a sense of who I am as a person? And they know me, but does this paper read off of like that? And so that goes to my other point of when you're writing your statement, I think it's really important to be able to tell a story, like from beginning to end. And from my personal statement, I really wanted to take a culmination of all my experiences and tell a story about what public health means to me, and how it was like a story that began with like, oh, the definition of public health, what is it? And then it like went through all of my experiences, and all of them were super broad. It was like, my experiences in community development, to like mental health in my own family, to my experiences at UCR, and all of that. I ultimately ended with the story that like anything is public health, anything and everything is public health, and that's what it means to me. And I am determined to learn more about what it could be and how we can evolve in that. And so I think telling that story is super important, and that's what really engages the reader.
Yeah, I think everyone who's spoken has said a lot of what exactly what I did and how I felt about this process. I would say, just to add something that I didn't hear, when I struggled with my personal statements, I thought like they were tough. I feel like I'm a pretty solid writer in other aspects, but for whatever reason, just writing about myself was hard. And there were so many different things that I wanted to include in my personal statements that I wasn't sure, like, that with their limits, they're fairly short. And so you have to pick and choose for sure. And I would say I wrote between 50 to 70 pages of different personal statements and different drafts, and just spent a lot of time. And it's different for everyone, the writing process, but what really helped me was just writing out all the thoughts I had in my head, and just spending time writing out everything, not worrying about the length, not worrying about how it sounded, and then going back later and fixing that up. But also, like others said, having people to look over it was really important for me. Definitely gave me some good insight and really helped me see how some experiences might not fit in to the personal statement as a whole, while others, did fit better. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Panelists, how did you apply to only the program to which you're pursuing? So, for example, an MPP, an MPH, or a JD, or did you apply to other programs as well? I know there's a lot of programs out there. We haven't even started mentioning the MBA or MPA route. And what made you? What did you apply to? Sam, if you want to start us out.
Yeah, I just applied to MPP programs. I applied to UCR, UCLA, USC, and UC Berkeley.
Joy?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was an undergrad, I majored in public policy with an emphasis in health policy, well, health and social policy. And I actually was between applying to either an MPP or an MPH, because like public policy and health policy in general is really broad. So I actually talked to people who had gotten their MPP and MPH degrees, I set up meetings with them. So I met them at like networking events, or like throughout my time, I just kind of during my year off, I just like met with different people that I knew had MPH or MPP degrees and just asked questions about, why they pursued what they did, what their education was like, and just so I get a sense of what these types of programs teach. And so I knew I wanted to do public health, but that, again, even that field is super broad. But after talking with people and kind of ruminating on the core structures of what these programs look like, I ultimately went with an MPH because I wanted a more broad public health degree with like a concentration in health policy. I also really wanted to go to a program that was grounded in like the social determinants of health, and that was going to be at its core, rather than I think for MPPs it is, and MPPs definitely focus on social determinants of health, obviously, as well. But I think that I think it's definitely more research focused. And really can be quantitative. And so I was like, that's not where I want to go. But I'm really glad that I did, because it gave me a better sense of, where I wanted to go. Because also going into grad school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I think it was nice to go into a broad degree and then kind of specialize once I was there.
As a follow-up, did any of you apply to a joint or a dual degree, or did you consider it in your search for kind of the next step? Sam, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely thought about it. I didn't apply just because stuff came up. I got busy, and I will say I thought about it and I didn't do it. But I am considering, future like law school after I finish pursuing my master's. Also, I didn't say this earlier, but I wanted to just add it in. I don't know if now is the right time, but when I was applying for grad school, I made sure to have backups. So I was applying to, actually, I'm going to USC. When I was applying, USC was like kind of, I considered that like a safety when I was applying. So I applied to some schools that I may have not wanted to get into as much as others, but as backups, just to have that safety. Definitely glad I did that. But also I was focusing on applying for fellowships as well. Coro Capital Fellows are two of the ones that I applied to as well. And jobs, I had potential jobs lined up as well that I was applying for and interviewing for. And I think that's just a really smart thing to do, because if you don't get into the school that you want to get into, if you aren't able to afford going to school, or if if another opportunity comes up and you want to say you don't get into UCR, UCLA, and then you apply to these fellowships, well, now you can continue bolstering your resume and helping to get more experience. So yeah, that's just what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Joy.
Yeah, so I definitely considered a joint degree. And then I looked at the cost and then also determined the number of years that I have to be in school. And as trivial as it may sound, not the cost part, because that is a real consideration. I also just kind of realized that I was done with school at a certain point and that I didn't want to pursue that. And that it was like a totally okay thing to do and to decide. I knew that like I could probably withstand 2 years, possibly 3, but knowing myself, like I wanted to get the additional schooling that I could to further the job prospects that I had. But ultimately, like I knew for my own mental health and what I could withstand, it was probably 2 years of more school. So
I think that was like actually like a perfect segue into like the next prepared question. So we kind of noticed that I think that there are many factors when accepting like an offer to a specific school that you do end up pursuing. So essentially, like what factors like were playing in your head, like out of like all the options that were given to you, and like what made you pick like your specific program like specifically? I saw Yoli's hand raised first, and then Yoli, then we can go to Sam.
Yeah, of course. So I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I got accepted both into UCLA and UCR. And whatever the factors were that I decided, personal factors that I decided to go to UCR, one of the main driven factors was that there was more opportunity in terms of fellowships, internships at UCR. And I was awarded a fellowship that helped pay for a lot of my costs. On top of that, I was offered a teaching assistant position, and that ended up setting me up into my current fellowship that I am at right now. So to be quite honest with you guys, cost is the number one factor for me in deciding to what school to go to.
I would say cost as well for me. I was lucky enough to receive a full ride for USC's program. If I didn't receive that, the aid I got, so I got accepted into UCLA, I got accepted into UCR. I applied to Berkeley, I didn't get in to that program. But if I hadn't gotten the aid from USC, I probably would have been doing a fellowship now.
Oh, Joy, and then we can go to Francesco.
Yes. So cost, yes, was one of the big ones, and it should be, because generally you have to think about the loans that you're taking out, especially if they're subsidized or unsubsidized. So definitely look into that before you guys take any loans, please. Unless you guys are already probably taking loans for college, then you guys already know. But with my financial aid, Yale was actually the cheapest option out of all the schools, surprisingly. And they were really generous with my financial aid. But also I thought about, besides name recognition, it was really the network that I could build, because it's annoying thinking that, like, okay, wow, once I'm now into school, like once I'm applying to grad school, I have to think about my job prospects. Like, it just feels like a never ending race of running to the next like goal stop. But ultimately, you know that after grad school, unless you're pursuing more school, like a PhD or a law degree, you need to think about where your jobs are going to be. And I believe that Yale had a really vast network, and being able to tap into their professors and top researchers in the field, it made the most sense, and also just felt like there was a lot of room to grow. I liked how small the program was, because coming from UCLA and UCR, you guys know how big your programs are, and it's really nice to just be able to get close to your cohort, and to get to know your professors, to actually have a one-on-one time that you generally don't get to get for undergrad. So.
And then Francesco.
Yeah, well, for law school, I knew going in that I wanted to have a public interest career. And so for any other people here who are interested in that kind of a career, law schools, not all law schools have it, but some law schools do have it, and it's called LRAP. It's a program that helps you pay off your student loan debt for law school if you go into the public sector, and it works alongside the federal public loan forgiveness program. So LRAP is something to look out for law schools. And then second, I would say, is culture. I think Berkeley has a very strong public interest culture, and everyone there does public service, believes that their legal education should be used to help everyone in the community and advance social justice. And so doing those campus tours when you get your admissions letters, getting to know people, seeing how the professors are, and just making sure that it feels like a good home for you, that's just going to make your time there even better.
All right, thank you for that. So the next question is, what did you guys major in at the undergrad level? And do you feel like that program prepared you to do well for your post-college endeavors? Ayoli?
Yeah, so I definitely like to share this to anybody who's who's maybe considering internships, fellowships, or grad school. So I majored in public policy at UCR with the School of Public Policy, but one of the requirements of the program is to do an internship. And I knew for sure back in my second year, I knew for sure that I wanted to be a social worker and I was going to apply to get a master in social work. I was almost 100% positive. And with the internship requirement, I decided to go and intern at DPSS, which is the Department of Social Services here in Riverside. And that just opened up my whole mentality to this is not what I want to do. Like, I thought this is what I wanted to do. And now that I'm here interning, not to shame or talk bad on them, but it's just, it was not what I wanted to do. I could not envision myself being a social worker for the rest of my life. So then I decided to take another internship, which had to do a lot with research and qualitative and quantitative studies. And I was like, yes, this is me. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. So luckily for that internship requirement for my undergrad, it opened and really narrowed in into what I wanted to do and pursue after I graduated.
So, oh, yes, Joy.
Just another comment of like the internships for sure, and that it actually was the reason why I came back to DC. I loved DC so much. If you guys have a chance to actually, and the cost, if you can get a paid internship that can cover the cost, especially, loved. I did the UCDC program. Actually met UCLA and UCR students and all the UC students. Changed my life. Also being 21 years old in DC is very fun. But yeah, no, I loved it so much that I actually made a vow to myself that I would come back to DC sometime later. And so it's really cool to be here now.
Joy, I'm actually really glad you're speaking right now because we have a question from the audience for you about that, I think. So you mentioned being a policy consultant in DC. Can you share more about what your role is as a consultant in the particular agency you're working for right now?
Of course, yeah, happy to. So, I am a health policy analyst for a consulting firm, a strategy firm in DC. We pretty much do cover any and all health policy issues. And if you ask a consultant what they do, like it's honestly everything. It is whatever your client wants. So, being a policy analyst with a background in public health, I draft a lot of summaries and memos of legislation. So I know that like during your internships, people are asking you to summarize things like all the time, but like that is actually what people's job duties are, is to summarize and like distill like complicated information for lawmakers and for regulators who just don't understand things. So trust me, like what you're doing is not like just like it's important work, but a lot of that, a lot of research analysis, and managing project management with clients. And yeah, I think that it's a really interesting field. I actually never thought that I would go into policy consulting. I always thought that I would more go into nonprofit or into the think tank, but the opportunity came up, and also applying during a pandemic is very difficult. So I think it's a really interesting field, and consulting can be anything, but health policy consulting is always a really fast ride because health policy issues, especially right now, are ever changing, and they need people to like quickly distill this type of information to others and to make it more accessible.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer. So we do have another question from like the audience, but this is like for all the panelists. So kind of drawing us back to like the application process. What experiences do you think made you stand out in the process? And what do you think specifically for like the MPP candidates, what do you think the MPP admissions counselors were like looking for? Sam.
Personally, I think I had a pretty high GPA. I definitely think that played a major factor in my where I got admitted and the amount of aid I received. But I would also say like your work experiences. Like if you're in undergrad right now and you have time, like try and be proactive, look for those internships, look for ways in which you can volunteer and help out. It doesn't even have to be an internship. If you're volunteering and doing stuff and you're dedicated to public service, like help out in your local community and stuff like that. But I would think, yeah, I was able to also secure some pretty solid letters of rec from some people. Like some of the letters of rec, for example, were from alums of, one of them was an alum of the USC Price school. Another, their daughter went to the Price school as well. So having, letters of rec with people who have connections, if that's possible, because that it can be hard. I kind of got just lucky from that. But I think that is yeah, what helped me kind of stand out.
Mela, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so actually, since the question was about what MPP admissions people are probably looking for, we actually gathered advice from the UCR and the UCLA MPP program admissions people. So we have one person who contributed for the UCLA MPP program, and I realized that they have an application services review, which I know a lot of our panelists today spoke about how important it is to get your personal statement read by people. So this is a really good channel to do that. I will be sending the UCLA representatives email over here so you can like talk to them further. But he actually gave a lot of advice for that. So one of the things he mentioned was since the GRE is optional given the pandemic, it is something that's going to continue next year as well, like the panelists have mentioned. But they also did mention that if you're not doing the GRE, for example, you probably want to show that you have some sort of quantitative background, especially because the UCLA MPP program is very quant heavy. Like I think they said 4 of the core courses are in the quantitative aspect. So they recommended that you should have some sort of experience in microeconomics or statistics because it'll help you stand out, especially in your undergraduate coursework. But they also said that it's not like a scary thing. They don't want to scare anyone from like applying for it if you don't have a quant background, because at the end of the day, some of the applicants in that have applied and been accepted did not have a strong quant background and still got in. Because like leadership in the community or on campus is definitely like a big plus. Like the panelists have been saying, I'm going to echo that. Another thing that you probably want to focus on is a statement of purpose, like we have spoken about today's event. They've mentioned that you should focus on highlighting your academic or professional or extracurricular experiences and how they prepared you for grad school. So like Francesco was mentioning earlier, you would want to make it look, wrap up the entire puzzle piece of your application. You should also, they also said that you should make sure you name drop faculty whose research interests you, especially in the MPP program, so that they know that your interest is very genuine and you can like wrap it back to your own personal narrative. One of the things that they did mention very explicitly is apparently the MPP program for Luskin does have multiple events and they want you to reach out as much as possible. So try to network as much as you can. They are there to help you. So even if you want them to like look through your statement of purpose during the summer, that is an option available for you. So if you have any more questions about that, you could feel free to DM me and I can expand on the things I said, but I'll just share the contact information for the representative on the chat. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you for that. So kind of a segue, I also asked like our UCR MPP like graduate and counselor for like any tips that she would like to give like any undergrads that are interested in applying that like they've kind of seen in like the UCR MPP program. So specifically, they said that all applicants should have all their information from the get-go. I think that definitely strengthens your application, specifically your letters of rec. They noted that they have seen several students who have applied early on, but the processing of their application was delayed months because their recommenders did not submit their letters in a timely fashion, and this can play into the amount of gift aid awarded for the program. So that's kind of like what UCR is kind of seeing when it comes to like the MPP program. So definitely, if you're interested in UCR MPP, definitely stay timely with your application submission. But that was actually kind of a segue for that question. But another student question that we did have was for all panelists. So what would you say was the biggest contributing factor to your acceptances? I know we kind of highlighted different things that like definitely played a role, but what was that one thing that you personally believe like got you the acceptance? Would you say it was like your academic achievements, any field work that you have done, your statements, or was it like honestly a combination of everything in your application? Francesco?
I would say that it's always going to be a combination of everything on your application. Um, Probably for me, I think what helped is that I highlighted how I wanted to go into law school because I was interested in both getting the knowledge needed for advocacy through litigation, but also was very interested in policy advocacy. And I feel like that's probably not often highlighted in law school applications. People always tend to think of lawyers as working in big law firms and or nonprofits, and not really thinking about the lawyers who are working in Congress or who are drafting legislation. But I think that if you are interested in policy work, and if a JD is something that you see yourself possibly doing, highlighting that is going to be very helpful, because uh, it, it just it just shows the admissions officers that you know that um, the law is a system that you can use for change. It can be done in a courtroom, and it can also be done in Congress, in your local city office, in at the House of Representatives, at the State House here in California. Making sure you're expressing your purpose to those admissions officers is always helpful.
Joy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Francesco was really on the nose about how you showcase yourself in, and this is the same as like similar to undergrad, right? And that you have to show as much of yourself on this essay in like a certain number of words. But I really think that my personal statement, like weaving the story and being able to talk to like how my experiences truly like have impacted me in a way that really pushed me to pursue my MPH, but also telling it in a way that just like is like a story from beginning to end, and that makes sense for the reader. But also, and I don't know how much of a role this actually played, but during my time at UCR, I was a chief ambassador for the public policy program, and really got to know the dean Anil Dialalakar. And when I asked, some of you may know Mark Maniling, he was my direct boss, for a recommendation letter. He actually wrote the letter and then had the dean sign it for me. And so the letter came from the dean himself. And so I think that may have played a part, but either way, you never know who you meet in school, in like during your undergrad degree. So make as many connections as you can, and just be yourself.
Yoli?
Yeah, just to kind of keep going, keep the conversation going. They all hit on some really spot on points. But I also think one thing that could potentially help you is being an early applicant. So if the program has like an early application deadline, you should really want to consider it. Also have that communication with the advisor, like reach out to them, ask them, to review your statements. I just think creating connections really helps, even if it's just a simple email or sitting in on one of their events. I think that's definitely going to help you out. So I would say creating that relationship, and then if there's an early application deadline, I would definitely shoot for that early application.
Definitely, thank you. So this is actually our last question of the night. So I think this kind of goes back with like letters of rec. I think this is like when it was submitted was letter of rec questions, but a lot of you kind of touched based on how you kind of had like a personal connection with like your recommenders. So where did you get how would you get the experience to have the people write your letter of rec? Did you like do like research with them? Did you take classes with them, or was it just a straight personal connection? Sam.
Yeah, so I'll just say who I got my letters of rec from and how I know them. I got letters of rec from a professor I did research with. I took his grad course as an undergraduate student, so I had my honors capstone, and we had established a good relationship by then. I was also able to get one from the dean of the School of Public Policy as well, like Joy, and that was very useful. And then I got one from Assembly Member Jose Medina, who I had worked with in the past, and I got one from Meredith Turner, who works with the UC Office of the President. I believe she's the Associate Director of Institutional Relations, but I had worked with her through the UC Advocacy Network. So a majority of the people I got, 3 out of the 4 people I got letters from were either bosses or people, yeah, I had just been working with, and the other was a professor.
Yoli.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I am two of my recommenders were professors, and one was the dean of the School of Public Policy. Just because I didn't really have that much experience outside of UCR, so the way I got connected with UCR was I obviously took their courses, but I really like to be engaged. So just showing that engagement will really leave a long lasting impact on the professor. So when you go back and you ask them, like, hey, would you be able to write me a letter of right? They'll be like, oh, yeah, you took my class back in spring 2019. You were really passionate about this and this. So I really think the relationship starts in the classroom, especially for professors. And I can't speak upon outside because my recommenders were mostly professors. But I think establishing that connection and establishing, that long lasting impact that I like to frame it as in the class. So then when you go back, they still remember you like, oh yeah, you were this person in my class. But other than that, I would kind of, walk through their office and see if their door was open. I would stop by, just ask them how their day was going, ask them if they were doing any research projects. I will be honest with you guys, professors love to talk about their research. So that is one way you can go and make that connection with them. It's just stopping by, emailing them like, hey, what research project are you working on now? Once you open that door to talk to them, they will talk forever, and that will create that relationship. I feel like you need to go ahead and be comfortable enough to ask them for that letter of rec.
Thank you so much, Yoli. So unfortunately, we are just out of time, but I want to thank all of our panelists for their time today in sharing their experience on the application process and their study so far. And you all are doing great things, and we're happy to see some some UCR SPP alumni join us as well. And so great to have everyone there. I also wanted to thank the SPP advising team and the Roosevelt Network chapter at UCLA for co-programming with us. We look forward to working with y'all in the future and appreciate that at the end of the day, this is all for the students and all for the furthering of education. So once again, wanted to thank everyone, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you.